Yes. So the isolation, that I suffered was severe. Well, Patrick Bet David, I had seen a podcast with him a year prior when the movie,
Sound of Freedom?
yes,
Yeah.
he actually said that he doesn't believe in what he called the conspiracy theory of, the networks killing children and drinking the blood and everything. So, but this was something that had come up like months earlier, and it was very, about the names. And it wasn't like I made a promise or anything either. And then right before the interview, that same manager came out. Then he was just asking, can you name this name? Can you name that name? Eddie
Like
Arnold.
David Rockefeller?
That's the one I didn't want to say, but he kind of out of. And so several were abused by Epstein, and all were programmed by him. So he was actually a known programmer.
Let's just say like Prince Andrew or anybody that's been named in the Epstein file. I almost feel like these people are just like the sacrifice, like at the altar, to give us, the people, something to ruminate on, something to satisfy our needs for the time being while they go on to keep working.
When I started to heal, it took me 10 years to find a therapist that would believe me.
Oh, I'm feeling low.
Welcome everybody, this is your host Smith, and this is Domino One. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. And today we have a special guest, as always. And I think this topic that we're going to talk about, which is sex trafficking and CSA, those are all topics that are very, how do I say, icky. People don't like to talk about them. They're taboo. They're just uncomfortable to talk about. But you know what? Just because they're all those things doesn't mean that it's not happening right now. And the fact that it is happening should just make you want to learn more about it and understand what's at stake. And so today, without further ado, I will introduce my guest, Anneke Lucas. Thank you so much for joining me today. And it is a privilege to have this opportunity to speak with you. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing really well. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. It is, again, my privilege because I've read your book and I've listened to a lot of podcasts that you've been on. And to be frank with you, I think the work that you're doing, you have also inspired me to do this because I've mentioned this in a previous podcast. This is not exactly what the kids would call my bag. Like, I'm more of a timid and personal type of guy, but spiritually speaking, I just feel like this is a calling that God has put on my heart to raise awareness for CSA. And as a victim, I've written my book on it, Scars Beneath the Skin, as you can see here. And I believe we should all do whatever we can do to raise awareness to this issue of sex trafficking or CSA or any types of abuse. But really, when it comes to our children, that should have been the line a long time ago. And we're seeing a lot in the news that we might also talk a little bit about the Epstein stuff, the Diddy stuff. So a lot of things are coming to the surface. So today I'm just extremely privileged to give my audience this opportunity to hear you and to talk about your book a little bit. So what have you been doing today? You been doing anything fun?
Well, I do work a lot, and I do want to thank you as a fellow survivor also. It's nice,
Absolutely.
always nice to speak to fellow survivors. And I also want to thank you for reading my book, because I do a lot of interviews, and as you know, a lot of hosts have not read my book, and it makes a
Yeah,
big difference, I think, in
it does
terms of.
make a big difference. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you and I were supposed to have this interview a little bit down the line. But the moment your schedule opened up, I had to make space. I had to free up my schedule to get this interview in because I just believe it's so important. So since yesterday, and I had already started reading it, but last night I'm just reading it. And I mean, it's so good too. I encourage everybody to pick up a copy. And at the end, we'll ask you where people can get your book from. And please definitely do let them know where to get a copy because it is absolutely amazing and people need to hear about stuff like that. Without further ado, we're going to just jump right into it. So again, speaking of the book, so when I was reading the book at the very beginning in 1973 in your book, Quest for Love, that's the name of the book, by the way. And I wanted to kind of start from where you started from. So you talk about a simple life, you talk about school, you talk about life back then. So take us back to when you were that age, 1973. I believe. So take us back what life was like for you, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, I actually was trafficked from 69 to 74, and that's from the ages of 6 to 11. And I grew up in Belgium. I was born in Belgium, and first to a single mother in Brussels, and then we moved to the Flanders village. And then there, I believe our family was infiltrated, but we were a middle class family.
Hmm.
And, there are a lot of working class. Both my mother and stepfather, she married when I was 3, were from very working class families. They both were alive during the Second World War, which did a lot of, well, there was just so much trauma connected to every war, connected to that war. So people were generally very traumatized. And then the poverty that they came from was real. And my stepfather sort of made money in TV as a cameraman, which of course an area that expanded a lot while he was working during his working life. So he did well, was very proud of his money. And so they kind of like felt better than the working class people, my
Hmm.
parents. And my mother, of course, was mentally ill, and she also came from a working class background. It was all about the money and the status. The way she would brag about it was sort of weird.
How so, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, she would always be dropping names, and people would come by, and then she sort of felt secretly better than them. And then she would say,
Hmm.
well, she would brag about her friend, the countess, who was actually her contact from the network. Or she would like to say that I wrote that in the book. Or one time she was just bragging that I had lunch at the castle, for example, which,
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily true, but she just wanted to talk about, she just loved that we had money. I mean, we were middle class, we weren't super rich, but,
Hmm.
had our own house and yard and everything. And yeah, and I had a half brother. And that's so we were looking from the outside as a very regular middle class family. But really, both my parents were very traumatized and had strange behaviors when you look a little more closely.
Okay. So you talked about your stepfather. Where was your dad in the picture?
He wasn't in the picture at all.
Okay.
My mother and father had a one night stand, so I didn't know him growing up. I met him when I was older. I met him when I was 18. And
Hmm.
then, I only found out who he was when I was 17.
Wow.
And
So
then
with go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, and then looked for him and found, got to speak to him. And, that's a whole other story.
Mm,
But yes, he was a classical musician. He was a composer and a director. So different background for sure.
yeah. So how? Okay. So your dad wasn't in the picture. So as far as your stepfather, did he play much of a fatherly role in your life as far as like what a father was supposed to be? Because I understand sometimes it's just different. And from the book, I think I know the answer to that, but I kind of want to hear from you. So what kind of advice, how was he there for you or how was he not really there? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, the thing that made me feel safe with him was that when I was very little, so when they were just married and I was like 3, 4, 5 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I remember at night he came and he put a little cross on my forehead. He was a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, God bless you and save you. God bless you and save you. And so I liked that.
Okay.
And that was it. For the other part, he really was very excited that my brother was born. And then he also clearly preferred my brother. And I always felt a little bit like on the outside, a little bit like
Left out.
yeah, well, yeah.
Gotcha. So, growing up around that age, I know your brother was 4 years younger than you, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and did you guys have any hobbies? Were you close to your little brother? Did you guys do anything fun during the day, or what was that like?
We were not very close. So he was born. My stepfather was very excited about him. And then my mother started giving me to the pimps that ended up trafficking me originally soon after his birth. And so I was being taken on outings with these people that I really didn't like. It was a woman who came to clean at our house. And yes, we were not that close, although sometimes he was in the car when my mother then ended up driving me places. Sometimes he was there in the car, and not really knowing when he wasn't asleep yet or something, she would take him. But otherwise, she would leave him alone in the house while
Hmm.
she was taking me places. So we were never really very close. I felt protective of him,
Hmm.
but then he was never taken to the network. And I think that was my stepfather who clearly looked out for him in a way that I think he figured, she's your daughter, you do what you need to do. I'm not going to get involved. So he very strongly closed his eyes to everything that was happening. But then he also, I don't think she would have dared to also traffic my brother
Why do you think? Was it
because
because the age difference or why?
I think because of my stepfather, that
Gotcha.
he might have asked questions for over what had happened to him when
Hmm.
with me, he just accepted her story without question.
So in the book also you talk about when your mother would be taking you to those networks, and as she's getting out the driveway, the way she was very conspicuous as to not make any noise with the car and just let it roll down the driveway and then kind of start it up farther down the road so that your stepfather didn't hear or your brother didn't wake up. So he never picked up on any of that stuff throughout the years, correct?
Well, as I also wrote in the book, is that I tried to tell him, but he didn't want to know. So,
Right.
when he was also gone a lot, just
Hmm.
he would be gone for months at a time. For he filmed a travel program on TV,
Hmm.
and then they would go away for a long time. So he was gone a lot, and when he was there, yes, she would just get out of their bed, and then you wonder, can he let her go without questioning? But then
Right.
she also had affairs.
She did what?
She also had affairs.
Oh, wow. So, do you think he may have known about all that stuff and just somehow him and your mom kind of had some sort of understanding? This is my life, this is your life, and that's just kind of how things are. It's just hard for me to even fathom that, getting out the bed and just those things are happening for so long that, he wasn't really vocal about his opinions. Do you know, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy when you
Hmm.
think about it. Because, yeah, he would be in bed, she would get out of bed, she would roll the car down the driveway, start it up at the bottom. He didn't want to know. So I don't think they had an understanding. I don't think anything was spoken between them. I don't think anything was spoken between her and the network,
Mm,
even though she was paid.
right,
I don't think anything was spoken, but I think they have this form of dissociation that causes this incredible denial, which in my mother's case also was so strong that anything that didn't fit in her narrative of her as a good mother, it just didn't exist.
right.
Even if she was confronted with it, it still didn't exist. So it's a form of denial that is insanity, but it was very strong with her and it was really strong with him as well.
Wow, that's incredible. Also in the book, Quest for Love. So you talk about this is more at the beginning of the book as well, but and I believe it was 1996. Whenever I want to talk about the Mark Tudor, Tudor,
Dutroux. Yes, Mark Dutroux.
Dutroux. Yeah, there we go. So when the chief investigator got fired and how everybody got to the street, I think it was around like 300,000 people or something like that. My question here is, do you think that's the time not only Belgium, but the world really got exposed to what sex trafficking really is and what's been kind of brewing and that they were just never aware of?
It was it was very big at the time in 96. And yes, because bodies of children had been found, that Dutroux case in Belgium became a very big deal. And it turned out, of course, to be um, connected to the same network as that I was trafficked in. But here in the United States in the 1980s, we had the Franklin scandal, which really was the same type of thing. In
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska, we had a politician and a conservative politician who also ran a sex ring and also trafficked children even to the White House. And the Dutroux case and the Franklin scandal sort of have things in common in that nothing eventually happened in terms of justice. In both cases, I think in the Franklin case, somebody went to jail, but the victims themselves were incarcerated for supposedly lying under oath, perjury,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the survivors refused to retract her testimony. And so she was actually imprisoned for that. And in the Dutroux case, there were the bodies of the children that had been found because Mark Dutroux was a pimp for the network, but he did things a little differently. Instead of infiltrating into the family like happened to me with this
Mm-hmm.
woman coming to work for us and then her and her husband taking me out and babysitting and whatnot. And then they took a year before they then started to traffic me to this network.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Martin Dutroux kidnapped children, and then he had to keep them when they were not being trafficked out to the network. Then he had to keep those children in his own homes. And so he built dungeons in his homes to keep the kidnapped children. And so he wasn't, because he was in and out of prison all the time, he ended up starving some of the children. And, they just were left in the dungeons. So this was a horrific case, and two
Yeah.
children were rescued live from his dungeons. And that started the great furor around that case.
Mm-hmm.
And then the focus was on him, but he immediately said that he was working for a larger network. And then it took 8 years for the case to go to trial. And then by the time it went to trial, all the survivors that had come forward and all the testimonies that had anything to do with larger network were cut off from that case. So we had 6 children, 4 dead, and then in the 8 years that it took for the case to go to trial, there were about 30 people that died in suspicious circumstances, wanting to come forward with
Mm-hmm.
or had physical evidence of network activity.
That's you know, that's as you're explaining all that, it's fascinating and but fascinating in the worst possible way. But somehow it's weird because I just feel like there's so much similarity to something that's happening right now as we speak in this world, especially in the US and the UK. So I want to go back to that, of course, which is the Epstein stuff. So I might have a couple questions and try to get your thoughts on a few things later. But again, going back in the book, one thing that as I was reading it, that kind of stuck out to me. There was this character in the book, I think his name is Patrick. In the book you wrote when he approached you and just looked at you kind of dead in the eyes and I quote, your mother doesn't love you. And to me, I am a father and I have a absolutely a wonderful family with 4 beautiful kids. And part of the big reason is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, because I care for them so much and I just don't want to just stop there. I want to care for all of the kids. I was in a really bad situation when I was younger, or your age. I was not sex trafficked, but I was exposed to, CSA and my uncle was involved. And it's just, when I read about your story, when I read about other people's stories, and at the end, I'm going to have a few questions that I'm going to ask you specifically from my audience and people that when I go on tour and then speak at schools and churches and teach classes. So there are a few questions that they've asked me over the past few months that I wanted to also get your answers on. But when Patrick told you that as a kid, as a young kid, what did that make you feel? That your own mother was the perpetrator behind a lot of things that you were going through.
Yes. In the bigger picture, I'm so grateful that I got another perspective on my mother because obviously I was greatly attached to her. And as you may know, authority figures that are scary, you end up as a child being even more attached to them because you need them for your survival. So you try to please as much as you can.
I do know
in-
that. People
Right?
pleasing, that's a part of surviving as a survivor. We wear it as a cloak. Absolutely.
Yes. So this was very strong with my mother. And I think children, and the beauty of children is that all they really have to give in this world is their love,
Mhm.
which is completely pure and beautiful. And it's
Innocent.
right. And it's the most precious thing in the world, the innocent love of a child.
Yes.
So with my mother, she didn't receive it at all. So I just tried to love, 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 love her so hard just to really to try to stay alive, to
Mhm.
become like a way the only thing I have to give is my love, so I'm gonna love her harder than anybody in the world and hoping that that I'll get to live. So I was extremely attached to her. So when he said that, well, he was seducing me. So he was presenting himself as a
Mhm.
viable alternative to my
Mhm.
mother. He's a young gangster. So unfortunately, then I transferred my allegiance, you could say, my extreme love.
I did read that too. So you kinda love him for saying all those things, so you become more attached to him.
He became the only authority figure because when I could accept, I couldn't just say, I don't love my mother and then I don't love anybody else and nobody loves me. That's not
Mhm.
possible. You need somebody to attach to. So, yes, he
Mhm.
became that primary caregiver,
Yeah.
the 20-year-old gangster. Well, that's what happened. He became my primary caregiver. In a way, he gave me more than my mother did.
Mhm. Wow.
He saw more in me. He saw more in me that was true than she did.
Yeah. I recently did a video about fatherless homes, and in that video, for the second time, I played a clip of a pedophile that was being interviewed after spending time in prison, and they were asking him questions about how do you pick the homes that you go into. But before they even got to that, so he talked about how he kind of perpetrate his victim. So how he go about getting their trust before he can do what they do to them. And you would be well, you wouldn't be surprised, but perhaps some people in the audience might be surprised how much what you just said is true. You would think it's the opposite. The way your mind works, you would think, well, if somebody's being mean to me, if somebody doesn't have the best interest at heart for me, the automatic thing, the default action would be to go away from them or not liking them because they don't have the best at heart for me. But in a situation like that, as survivors, I guess neurologically, there's so many things that are so imbalanced that it would do the opposite. It would bring you closer, just like it did for you and Patrick, and just like it did for me and my uncle. So I think that's a really, really important point that people need to understand about people who've been abused. So,
Absolutely. Because children that have a secure attachment and have loving parents, they're not the ones that are going to get groomed by the pedophiles either,
hmm
because it won't work with them because they have a secure attachment. They know that they're loved and that gives them self esteem.
hmm
But when you're abused, well, then you don't really have good self esteem
yep,
because your focus is completely on the parent, making them good, or on whoever is the primary caregiver. You make them good. That's your job in life.
yeah. I agree. Let's talk about dissociation. So, um, a lot of survivors, so when they hear that word, if they can even compartmentalize it, because it's surviving as far as like any trauma, especially CSA or sexual trafficking and any of those things. I guess speaking from my own experience, you kind of don't even want to acknowledge that it's there, right? And so dissociation is a form of for survivors is a way to adapt with their trauma. So, what was that like for you as you grew up in that world?
Yes, in fact, dissociation, and when it comes to the network level, to the organized abuse level, children are sometimes even tested on their ability to dissociate.
hmm
So it's something that's very well known in those circles. But I had already dissociated because my mother was abusive. So she had already abused me when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already been abused by other family members, sexually abused by other family members at age 3. So I was already dissociated. And thank goodness for dissociation, because I would not have been able to go to school in the daytime thinking, well, it's not just abuse, as you know,
They were beaten
abuse.
too.
Well, I was also beaten, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then my mother made up some story about falling out of a tree or something.
Yeah.
But with the sexual abuse, you get blamed also. I mean, there's no way that any child would not believe that it's their fault in some way.
Yes.
You have no choice.
Yep.
So then you feel bad. And it's not shame that you can correct. It's not like your behavior is so and so, and now you feel shame, so you can correct it. So
Mm-hmm.
you start to feel that you're innately bad, and that then creates this guilt. The guilt that I felt, and I was called a whore by the perpetrators at
Mm-hmm.
age 6, 7, 8. The shame from that, from the idea that I'm a whore, which of course is not true, but I believed it.
Mm-hmm.
I would never have been able to go to school if I had held on to that knowledge. So the dissociation was very important to be able to live and not know anything, to have that whole experience, everything having to do with the network, completely compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the week, the truth is that my mother's denial helped to create that amnesic barrier for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to remember to think that this happened, and you don't want to, especially because you don't want to believe that this is what you are, or that
Yep.
this is what you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I didn't know any of this in the week.
Wow. So, the at the beginning you alluded to that fellow survivors. Uh, you know, I hate the fact that it's a love and hate kind of situation for me because just like I said at the beginning, I never thought I would be staring in front of a camera and speaking in front of hundreds of people and just having my thoughts be public like this because as a survivor, when those things are happening to you at such a young age, you don't know how to compartmentalize. You don't know where to put those things. And so therefore you become the definition of a double agent. So you can be in public and you show one persona, but when you are at home by yourself, your true you is just dying to come out or is dying to find a way to go. It's like you have something inside of you that's just trapped and it just doesn't know what to do. And most of your life, most days, it's being locked away. Just like you said, it's just a part of you that you don't know what to do with. And how could you? Because you're talking about 6, 7, 8, 10. Like you're not fully developed, not only just physically, mentally, intellectually. You don't know where to put any of it. And I think that's for me one of the hardest thing, even when I talk about those things and I interview people, I've interviewed people who talk about to fall asleep at night, they just have to chain themselves in their closets or they just scream. They just, they abuse drugs. They do like all sorts of drugs, alcohol, like everything's fair game in order to keep that persona hidden because no one will believe them. At least they believe so. And so for me, it's just, I love what you do. Again, I might say that a few times. I've already said it, but it's just, I don't think it could be understated because we live in a world where negativity sells, but that's the one negativity that I don't think sells as much as it should. Because if people truly knew what was happening, I mean, for example, this is not getting off topic, but you're talking about, according to the United States International Labor Organization, human traffickers victimize an estimated 27.6 million people worldwide. So I'm not special and I don't want to speak for you, but there's so many people this is happening to as we speak today. How is that not mainstream every single time you turn on the TV? So to me, that's what makes our work even more important that we keep speaking, we keep talking about this because the next the future of the next generation depends on it. So, thoughts?
Absolutely. And, I want to thank you for speaking out because, it tends to be more difficult for men and boys because there's more of pressure to be
Yes.
a man and everything. And girls, nobody expects anything from
Hmm.
you. In a way, the humiliation it's not easier, but it is easier to heal from because
Yes.
really in young adult life, no one expected anything of me. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to do. I was getting flashbacks very early on. But yes, to speak about this, so it's a really tight edge, I have to say, because I, on the one hand, people who do want to hear it often it becomes sensationalized, which we also don't want. We want to spread this. And then on the other hand, we don't want to shock people with the truth, which is so unbelievably extreme
Hmm.
that it's like worse than the worst horror film.
Hmm.
So I'm very aware of traumatizing people by talking just about what happened to me. But I think the most important reason that we don't really hear about it is because so I was trafficked in the Belgian network. My mother was selling me into that Belgian network that was, the elite of Belgium and politicians and, judiciary, clergy, nobility, royalty. And then they passed me on to what I would call the global network, which is sort of more what Epstein, I think, was related to.
Hmm.
And then in that global network in those years, it was 1972 and 1973, there I had the mind control training, and it was sort of like definitely a different level of professionalism in terms of inflicting trauma in order to get precise results.
Hmm.
And those people involved there, a lot of them had roles on the world stage, visible roles or roles behind the scenes, more or less. But there's a lot of control of what goes in the media from the very people that are committing these crimes, as we're now learning from the Epstein files.
Yes.
And that's the reason that this is so suppressed and that, you know, I have been tempted left and right. I've been public since 13 years and I've been tempted left and right by sort of easy, quick fame or
Hmm.
like this group and, this group will, and I steer clear from it. And then I realized afterwards that would have been a way to discredit me if I would have been in
That's a
that
good
group.
point. That's a good point. Yeah.
So there's a lot that happens all the time. And not only that, these people now that are trying to prevent me from speaking out, they know my blind spots better than I do. They know my blind spots because I found out that they keep very careful records of everything that was done to me. So there's a person that was really infiltrating to get information from me from certain things. I mean, they sound really out there, but I can't even say what they knew that was so specific because it's
Hmm.
so extreme again.
Yeah.
But they mentioned something to me to see as if it had happened to them, but to see if I would say, "Oh, that happened to me too." But it was so specific. It made me realize that they have records. And that was the idea anyway, that records are kept of everything. So that everything that was done to me in the programming that was kept, there was kept a record of it. And so they would know my own weaknesses, as they call it, or blind spots, as I call it, or vulnerabilities, as you may call it,
Hmm.
know them better than I do. And so, in a way, it's been this cat and mouse game where I get pulled at some blind spot that I have, and then I get pulled in a direction, like, for example, being loyal to other survivors and
Hmm.
want to protect them. And then I get pulled in by a survivor, but it's not just a survivor, it's also somebody who's actually still involved.
Wow. So is that happening like now?
That's
Everything
yeah,
they wow,
yeah.
that's
So
incredible.
then I heal more and become aware and
Mhm.
then get back to my integrity in terms of the message and how to I'm not worried about not reaching a lot of people. I'm just doing my thing and I try, of course, to just remain in alignment with what the divine wants of me. So that means I feel like the healing journey is like clearing up ego because the ego was wounded in the process of the traumatization. And then I heal, and that then clears up the ego. And then I can put it aside and just do what is wanted from me.
Right, right on. That's incredible that there's still people like that kind of playing what I would say, some sort of secret agent just trying to see where you're at and kind of get a feel for what you know, what you are willing to say and everything like that. Do you think that if you were to tell everybody what truly happened and who was involved, that your life would be in danger after so long?
In fact, a lot of the reason that there's several people that have sort of infiltrated. And of course, I was trained the same way. So I do recognize, even as I'm pulled in because they know my blind spot, I'm also, other parts are aware because I was trained the same way.
Hmm.
But it was really to let me know specifically to not say certain names that in the meantime have been said. But so there we are. There's still people that I'm afraid to name. And that's a combination from all the threats from when I was young,
Hmm.
which were also not idle threats because those were really cruel and psychopathic, insane, violent people. So I was threatened as a child graphically. So there's a lot of fear that's just still from my childhood, from the trauma. And then it's just me. There's nobody telling me you can do this, that's safe, that's not safe. I have to always just work with my intuition.
Yeah.
And I think I want to be on the safe side. And it's not so much really to save my own skin. It's rather that I think that I'm more useful alive than dead.
Agreed.
If it was a matter of giving my life for this cause, like if it was worth it, I would definitely do it.
Right.
But but I don't think it would really do anything. If I died now, I don't think it would just, there would be a little flurry and it would be over. So I think I have more value, usefulness, I guess, staying alive.
Yeah. No, I mean, nobody wants to die, especially prematurely. Nobody wants to die. And just like you said, if if it was that you would die, but we know exactly what would happen after that, it would just eradicate everything. I think I agree with you. I would be willing to do that as well, knowing that no more kids gonna get just
If that
trafficked
was the
or
result, I would
yeah,
gladly, I love my life, but if that
of
were the
course.
result, I would
Right.
definitely live my life.
Absolutely. It's called the greater good. So, like, I think that's what makes people like you and I, just by saying that, it makes us different from other people. And not to compare, but it takes a certain type of people to willing to see what needs to be done and believe in it wholeheartedly and pursue it. So, but I also agree with you. I don't think putting yourself in danger is worth it. Now, as I was preparing for this interview, I watched a lot more of your content. So the one that pops in mind as you talk about, naming names and stuff, you probably know where I'm going, was the one with PBD. And I guess I'm what you will if Pat watches this. So I'm a value tainer. I like Pat. I like his what he stands for. I like his faith. I like how he doesn't shy away from that. I like the fact that he's above, to me, he's a savvy business guy, and I love that. But what I love the most is those things that I just mentioned. So his faith, he's a family guy, somebody people should respect. But nevertheless, I did not like that mixed up that was happening between him wanting to know names and thought that you would come on his show and then name names and stuff like that. And excuse me if I'm being long winded, but I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. There are a lot of things in life you can say that you know. You can say that you've had experience in it. You can say that you can empathize, sympathize. You can say that you've read a lot about it, so you know about it. But I do think there is such thing as people who've been dealing with trauma, with abuse. There is a certain level, if you have not been to it, through it, you don't know. And so therefore those people do reserve the right and the space to actually make certain decisions. So it's not to say if you wanted to name names, it would have been a bad thing. That would have been your decision. But I do think in the media right now, people are sensationalizing those type of things because it's about clicks, it's about making money and stuff like that. I'm not in it for money, as I'm sure you probably are more focused and driven by the change, the awareness that you want to create within the space. That's where I'm at. I always say I have a specific audience. My audience is not gonna, people are not gonna come here to hear me just come up with the gossip or just putting people down and just demean people and just create some sort of hostile environment where people just come to get, just talked about the worst possible way. I'm all about creating awareness for this issue, the CSA, sex trafficking, like creating good, solid family values and talk about the family, the foundation, God, and all that stuff. So again, I think I'm agreeing with you. This is all to say that I'm agreeing with you. Don't put yourself at risk for no reason, and I believe what you're doing right now is so powerful. Again, I wouldn't be speaking with you. I wouldn't be reaching out to you and asking you to come and bless my audience with your knowledge if I didn't believe in it. So definitely stay alive. So be safe. So the next thing, did you have anything to add to that by any chance before I go on to the next one?
Well, Patrick Bet David, I had seen a podcast with him a year prior when this movie came out about this subject. I mean, it was about CSA, but in South America.
Sound of Freedom?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when that movie came out, he actually said that he doesn't believe in what he called the conspiracy theory of the networks killing children and drinking the blood and everything. So he said that he didn't believe it. So when I was invited, I didn't know if he changed his mind or not. And I had not connected with him personally. I'd only connected with his manager. But this was something that had come up like months earlier, and it was very, about the names. They invited me, and I accepted. That was it. And then it came up very early on, and then it was 2 months later that I actually flew out there to do the interview. So I didn't even remember, and it wasn't like I made a promise or anything either. It was just
Hmm.
maybe this opportunity. And then right before I was sitting in the green room, right before the interview, that same manager came out and he was like acting as a go-between. Then he was just asking, "Can you name this name? Can you name that name?" And I had agreed to name Pierre Trudeau,
Hmm.
and that was a big deal already.
Yeah.
That's a big name, and I ended up actually putting out many names of very, very people that at the time were extremely famous. Eddie
Like David
Arnold.
Rockefeller, right? I think that was one of them.
That's the one I didn't want to say, but he
Uh-huh.
kind of out of me. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that name came out, and then Eddie Arnold was country music singer. I mean, there were several people, and then of course the Prime Minister of Canada, the father of Justin. So several names were actually revealed in that podcast. Can't just flop these names out. I have to.
Would this be a person we would know?
Definitely, you would know the name.
Alive or dead?
I didn't think that this was going to be the kind of conversation we were going to have.
So the audience doesn't think I'm cornering you. You told Tony that you wanted to name names.
No, I didn't say that at all.
Come on, Tony. So when you told me, she said she wanted to name names that she's never named before.
All right, I'll tell you something. I was trained as a spy. That week, I was sleeping with men, and then I would go report on their weaknesses or their sexual preferences.
Is that
I'm not saying. So,
Hmm.
Sometimes you do these kinds of things, and I think it really helped the cause, to tell you the truth,
Good. That's really good.
because he kind of acted like he didn't believe me, which maybe he doesn't believe the whole thing,
Hmm.
but that really helped because then I was tested, like that was a real test to my credibility. And so I think it helped the cause.
That's good. That's really good. Like I said, like for me, we're just different. And I know how the internet works. This is not shade on Pat. I respect Pat, and I don't care to do this back and forth with anybody, really. But at the end of the day, if there's a shock value that I want to come out of that, is the fact that people are sleeping or acting oblivious to the fact that this type of crazy things happening. Sex trafficking, just like the numbers that I just gave you, 27.6 million people worldwide are being sex trafficked right now, whether it's at a truck stop, whether it's at a bar, you name it. There are many places, like kids, adults. This is as far as humanity, it's easy for somebody who's never been through it to kind of speculate or kind of read a little bit about it. But those people who are going through those things right now, that's their reality. And so therefore I have patience with a lot of stuff. I tolerate quite a bit of things, but there are certain things that I feel like should be held at a higher standard and people should treat them as such. And I'm glad that at the end that it worked out, that it kind of bolster your credibility. But I don't know. I just, at this point, I wouldn't have kept asking for names because I'm never going to name my uncle how he facilitated what he did and everything. And most likely, I don't really go on here trying to create shock value just talking about any graphic stuff. If I talk about sexual abuse, by now everybody knows what that entails. If you want to dig deep into it, you know what it is. So, and if it's happening, I think we should all be getting ourselves together and trying to figure out a way to stop it or try to educate ourselves and understand how to, help each other so that that doesn't happen. So earlier we talked, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I started out saying that I was not going to name anybody because I didn't think it mattered. And then eventually, there's a lot of pressure, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But also that ultimately the justice system for these people that caliber doesn't really work or hasn't worked so far. Maybe now this is changing. Who knows?
Hmm.
Hasn't yet, but let's see. Prince Andrew was arrested. That's
I saw that. I saw that. How do you
so.
think this is going to change the landscape of what's been going on, like with the whole Epstein stuff? So, what do you think about all that,
Well, what I'm noticing is that people are understanding that this is actually happening,
which
and
is
more.
great?
Yes, and so many people are understanding it that like Pam Bondi in this hearing,
Hmm.
everything she did to deflect and to attack and to distract, nothing worked. And especially in the face of the survivors that were all standing there,
Hmm.
it was particularly callous.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
so it's just not, but that's what what she does, that's what every politician does all the time,
Hmm.
except it didn't work
Yeah.
because people are saying, no, 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 we're not letting you do this.
Yeah.
And the pressure that's been put, I believe it's coming from the people because they refuse now. Because I always thought if people realize people are good, most people are good hearted.
Hmm.
So most people are not anywhere not pedophiles. Most people would think that that's an absolute outrage. And I think this dissociation and denial has a lot to do with the trust in authorities and the things that come through the mainstream channels and and alternative channels. That's the subject that's always sort of shadow banned. It's the subject that's always like minimized. Well, now it's out in the open,
Hmm.
and people are realizing that our politicians, people that they voted for, may be implicated in these things.
I think it's absolutely fantastic that finally, I mean, up to the level that we're seeing it in the UK, that's exactly what I want. I would like to see here in America. Because there are certain things that you need to wait and find out, like due process and everything. And I still believe in that. Don't get me wrong. But when we have so many emails implicating so many people, I'm not saying start locking up people right now. But the fact that we have that information, everybody's privy to it, but nothing's happening. We're seeing stuff in the UK with Prince Andrew. How come like all those big names in those files, they have not been perp walked yet?
Mhm.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? So I'm just like, enough is enough. And if it was up to you guys, and talking about the politicians, I don't care for either side. I think they're all liars. And I always say that this is my honest truth. If it was up to them, it wouldn't have been out. And all you would have said is just a whole bunch of redacted pages, and you would just be looking at sheets with black lines on them. But the people, we want to see it. I think there is some sort of revolution, not revolution, but something brewing that is bigger than just the government or the way that they used to do politics, where they just hide things. And when Bondi can just come out and say, like, we have the folders and blah, 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 blah. And then she thought, as time went on, she would just lie about it and it would just move on. Those days are long gone. And it feels so good. And I really mean that. It feels good because not just for what I went through, and I understand that aspect of life. You went through way more than I did, but there are also people like you. There are like, whether it's at the beginning a little bit and a mild, extreme level, none of that stuff should be acceptable. And I don't care who you are. If you perpetrated those sorts of things to innocent children, to anybody really, but innocent children, you need to get what's coming to you. That, and Prince Andrew, that's the same thing I want to see happening in America. My thoughts.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Epstein's and all that debacle, so what what's your raw thought on who Epstein was? And some people are saying that he's not even dead. I don't know if I'm we're not gonna get into that. Let's just take it as at face value that he is dead right now. But who he was, because of the network and the experience that you've had with those type of people, what is your best guess as who he was, and what are your thoughts on him?
Well, it seems from the files that he was actually maybe more connected he was, we knew that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he, because of the financial stuff, that he was more important than I thought he was. But I knew that he was an important programmer, which is, of course, not something that's clear from the files. But I work with survivors. So I counsel with survivors, and this is mostly survivors of this same kind of extreme organized abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so several were abused by Epstein, and all those that I've spoken to, maybe 5 people in all were programmed by him. So he was actually a known programmer.
What does that mean? Sorry. What does programming mean? Because we're not talking about computer, obviously. So, like, they're programming people?
Yeah.
What does that
Yes.
mean?
So the children, and I went through a mind control training, and that mind control training was led, in my case, it was in Germany. It was led by a German doctor, and Hans Hansen, and he was the programmer. So he was doing things, he was inflicting trauma in order to, in that trauma state, you have special gifts come out because your go to instinct, you go to your instinct survival response.
Yeah.
You have maybe physical strength or ability to hear very far or ability to see very far or psychic abilities that are awakened in these extreme circumstances when your life is put in danger. That's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So a programmer is someone who does that, inflicting trauma to get a particular result.
Yeah.
And so children get programmed like little computers, though.
Hmm.
It's not just for the sex trafficking, it's for everything. I was programmed also to learn to spy on people. I was also programmed, of course, for the sex trafficking, but then that's one aspect. But then at the same time, I was spying on the person. I was programmed to kill. I was programmed for many, many things. So these are all the ways in which these things are done, is that it's forced and you get put in front of a situation that is just impossible.
Hmm. Wow.
And
So you
then
believe? Go ahead.
you end up doing what is expected of you. And then that gets, through the trauma that they inflict on you, you get better at it because you're get always in that place of extreme fear. And then from there, you have all that energy. Yeah. So he was a programmer. He was a lot of the children that came through his hands. He was working with very young children. By the way, the people that I know, most of them were very young when they were trained by him. One was a baby that he brought from Kosovo. So she was a wartime orphan. He had gone to the orphanages there. That was actually recorded. And he brought back babies from these orphanages and then basically put them in families that are connected to this network in New York so that he had constant access to these children that were then becoming like almost like robots, but for the purpose of this network. So he was still a cog in a larger wheel.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously was, I think, more important than I thought. He wasn't just a programmer. He was also, it was very interesting, some of the videos that came out where he's explaining math in a way that I can understand it. I'm like, well, he's actually a good teacher,
Hmm.
and he was saying that finance is actually very simple and it's made complex so that we will not understand it because we're paying those people on Wall Street so much for things that are really very simple. And he's saying that he has a facility with money and playing around with it. And of course, he was also using that for he was blackmailing people for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he was getting a lot of these people that become very wealthy, they get money from everywhere because they exact money from everything and everyone.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's just insane, isn't it? It's so sick and it's so much like something you would never want to be part of. And lucky that that I didn't stay in the network, and I
Yeah.
would have been part of it.
If you were to describe the network in just a few sentences, how would you describe it? Because I know it can get very complicated, like the way you just talked about bringing babies from different countries and place them in different families, but those families have to do with the network and how to, like, describe the network in the simplest form that you can.
Okay. So it's a World Wide Web. It's like a spider web, and it branches out to small villages, and there's smaller groups in smaller villages, and it usually goes through secret societies, or it could go through the churches, or it could go through, but usually it's the top of the secret societies where
Mm-hmm.
things are really secret. And then those people will give their children to the higher ups, to the bigger groups in the cities. And then the cities, there's a bigger group in the country. And then in the country, there's a bigger group that goes to global. So there's people that are at the top of this network, like the Rothschilds, that,
Mm.
that I saw were the highest placed people. And then there's people that are working class in villages that are doing the dirty work. And that's just their life. Some are Satanists in secret. Some are, and and that's done the cover for another religion. But it is everywhere. But it is basically the idea of a secret society, of a secret club that is worldwide, where people get some material benefit for the selling their soul, for doing, they get some material benefit. So from in the working classes, it's often that those pedophiles never get caught by the
Mm-hmm.
justice system because there's someone at the police station that can arrange for that. And then it's the same in the justice system. They, like with the Dutroux case, there were some people in the justice system that arranged for that, the testimonies to be cut off from the case, and everything relevant really to the network was cut off from the case.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is arranged, and they sort of hog the power and the resources of the world. And that means that, there's a lot that we get to do with that have to do with every day that is actually coming from those same people,
Mm-hmm.
because the media is also controlled by them, even the alternative media. So there is this constant mind control happening on everybody. that when I was a child and I was going to be part of this global network and given a platform, I was going to be promoting, and I was 11 years old, mind you,
Mm-hmm.
the pedophile agenda. That's an agenda. So there's people that are actively trying to normalize pedophilia everywhere. And so things that do normalize and that move the Overton window are put out there so that people start to get confused. For example, it's never worked. There was a big push in the 70s as well, and it didn't work then. And I'm hoping that it's not going to work now. But it's just one thing. Sexualizing everything is also part of that, their agenda. To get everybody addicted to porn was part of their agenda. And that is then ultimately to get everybody addicted to porn. So everybody's really a slave to sex.
Mm-hmm.
So then people are more easily manipulable.
Correct.
And of course, the biggest thing, and that's why I call it satanic, is to pull people away from God and from the inner knowing and the intuition, which is the voice of God, which is, of course, the subtlest voice within you, and the voice of conscience, that by the people that I met, it was completely gone.
Wow. So you said a lot and it's just so good. So like really, really good information. But the first thing that popped in my head as you talked about how they work and how it's such a, I mean, just from, not that I didn't understand it before, but I understand completely what we talked about earlier about whether or not you would be willing to die for it by releasing certain names and certain information. When you know so much, when you understand how tangled up this whole web is and how, let's just say like Prince Andrew or anybody that's been named in the Epstein file of significance that might be going down with this ship, so to speak. I almost feel like these people are just like the sacrifice, like the lamb that they're gonna sacrifice at the altar to give us the people something to ruminate on, something to satisfy our needs for the time being while they go on to keep working. Because from what you've explained and what I've understand with this whole web of just not only lies, but like how this whole thing works, it seems like the only way for this to get better, really, really get better, is just, well, to use a term that everybody uses, is just to cut off the head of the snake. But it's that snake that you don't even know where it is, and it's one that might have multiple heads. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, it's very important. Yes, Harvey Weinstein was the same. Me
Mm-hmm.
Too originally was was a natural movement from all the people that have been harassed,
Mm-hmm.
used, that were just starting to come forward. And it was sort of the beginning. There was a real uprising there, and everyone started to share.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. And then it gets co-opted.
Mm-hmm.
So then it becomes time's up, and time's up was something completely different, really. And it was already politicized also. It was very much pushed to the left. And so then you see something gets politicized, it's already losing its grit.
Yeah. It's
Once you
values.
put
Yeah.
something, it's not about that anymore.
Right.
It's gonna be used because there's gonna be others against it, and then the right is against Me Too. Why? It's
Mm-hmm.
people talking about having been abused. And and then Harvey Weinstein was the one person that then got thrown under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
But then it seems that his lawsuit ended up being with victims that were mostly sort of using the casting couch, and where the consent question is very vague.
Mm-hmm.
He got 20 years, but now in the appeal, it looks like he's going to get off much easier. And we're not really hearing about that part, are we?
Of course not.
Because now he's getting out.
Yeah.
And with Ghislaine Maxwell, people are not keeping quiet. Everybody knows that she was sent to. Now she doesn't even look like her anymore. Like, we
Yeah.
don't.
I saw 2 photos. I'm like, uh-oh, what is happening?
What's happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is that we are presented with lies all the time. Once enough of us realize that we get lied to all the time, we want to know. We insist on knowing the truth, and it also means that, yeah, don't stop with Prince Andrew,
Mm-hmm.
because he was careless. The rule of the network is that You can do anything you want, but don't get caught.
Yep.
And if you get caught, we'll still try to protect you. But at some point, we're going to just let you go.
Because you're not going to destroy like, the core of who they are. They're always going to want to operate in the dark. But if you are the one who's slipped up, they will try to help you, just like you said. But at the end of the day, you'll get sacrificed to make sure that they continue to operate.
Right. So everyone focus on Prince Andrew. And let's forget about everybody else.
Yep. We got a big one.
We got a
Yeah.
big one. And again, it's sensationalized, right?
Exactly. And so see, that's again, that's such a good point too. We live in a culture where people they're looking for the next click. They're looking for the next jolt of energy, the next little gosh, that was like it's constant. Like, and when people live that way, you can tell them the truth and they see it as a lie because they've been lied to for so long. They don't know what is true and what is the truth. So you might present the truth to them and they don't believe you. Where this is where conspiracy kind of thrive because everything's a conspiracy theory. Everything's a conspiracy theory. But the thing about conspiracy theory, like there was a time where people didn't really want to listen to somebody who's a conspiracy theorist. But now there are so many crazy things happening, so many lies. Next time somebody's like, I think Epstein's alive. A few years ago, you probably would have been like, oh my, you crazy. Didn't you see him being hung in the prison? Now you're like, you might have a point. These people have been lying to me way too much. I'm not willing to dismiss you quite so quickly. I mean, Candace Owen is saying that he's alive, living somewhere. I do dread that. I'm one to believe that he did not kill himself, but he's dead. Somebody else killed him because the whole a whole minute is missing from the video that FBI released and stuff. Like everybody's so shady. How can you trust anybody? So now you have to do so much research on your own. And even then, everything's so hidden. You don't even know if you're going to get to the truth eventually. So it's just so convoluted. And it's sad because you have a generation right now growing up. They don't know where to anchor themselves. And that's a very, very bad place to be when you kind of flopping in the wind, not knowing where the truth lies. Which brings me to this question for you. As a parent, I think our job is so much more important. Not that it wasn't before, but I just feel like with the advent of social media and AI and everything, I think our job just got so much harder and so much more important. So what are your thoughts on like not just a dad, because I talked about that already, but how do you think families, like a mom and dad, how do you think they should go about life in their household to mitigate the risk of their loved ones being sexually trafficked or dealing with CSA or any types of abuse that might be lingering around the corner?
Wow, that's a really big question. And I'm not sure if I can answer that well because it's so complex.
It is?
Because it does mean be careful with screens because those games have chat rooms. And in
Yeah.
those chat rooms are pedophiles trying to get your children. It is so complex these days. So I think the most important thing is to always believe your children, whatever they say, and to have a relationship with them that they trust you enough that they will come and talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I said earlier. If there's a secure attachment, that child is, if there's a secure attachment, if there's love and care in the family, the child has had, the consistency, the positive consistency from their parents, preferably both, then yes, they can go and talk to the parent. They can go to talk to at least one of them
Mm-hmm.
when something's up. But the network is pulling at our children so much. Today, it's really complex to send your children to school
Yeah.
because there's so much now happening in the schools that I wouldn't really be okay with. I'm not okay with my child receiving sex ed at age 3, for example,
That's absurd to
or age
me.
5, or
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of programming
Mm-hmm.
that now is nothing to do with curriculum, and yet it's in the schools. And it's the public schools. So I think it's very complicated right now. But the
Yes.
most important thing is to be an aware parent. But I always say that the most important thing for everybody is to is to heal yourself because everyone has trauma today. There's nobody that doesn't have trauma. The blessing of the young people is that they're so aware that they don't have, you know, so the more privilege you have, I say that privilege is an invitation to not do your inner work. It's an invitation that gives you a worldly boost that you can take to rest your laurels right there. You don't need to go do anything else. You can just assume that you earned it without having earned it.
So a pass, pretty much. It gives you a pass.
It
In a
gives
way.
you a pep. Exactly. That's what privilege is. But it's from the outside. It has really nothing to do with who you are inside.
Right.
So
It's
I think
appearance. Yeah.
it's about your position in the external world.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you're perceived in the
Yeah.
external world. It's nothing about who you are. I think it's really important for everybody to heal
Mm-hmm.
from their own personal unresolved trauma, because it's the healing of the trauma that pulls you out of this toxic power structure
Yeah.
that makes us like children in the face of the authority figures, giving our power away to people that are ultimately psychopaths.
Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. So we're wrapping up here. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate it. So I don't want to go over time because I know you have other places that you have to be. As I travel, as I speak with young people, and sometimes they always have questions. So I do Q&A at the end. And I have some of the questions that they've emailed me. And I know that I was going to be speaking with you. I certainly wanted to get some of the questions and ask you directly and then get your thoughts on them. So the first one would be, if someone listening feels broken beyond repair, what would you say to them directly?
I would say that there is hope, that there is always hope, that God works in mysterious ways and you don't have to believe in God,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a self or a force that is bigger than you, and that there's, the world is changing in a way that is hopeful, very hopeful. When I started to heal, it took me 10 years to find a therapist that would believe me. Yes. So the isolation, that I suffered was severe, and I'm sure you know of it because
Mm-hmm.
most survivors have suffered extreme isolation. Darvo, speaking to someone and they not only deny it, but they then attack you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel completely broken, I just want to say there is hope. There is hope. And there's a lot available right now. There's a lot of resources available. Even just going on my website,
Mm-hmm.
there's a resource page and there's a lot of free resources that are available and groups that you can join. And it's really a beautiful world. And there's a lot of very good people in it that really want to support.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. The next one I have here is, what part of healing do people avoid the most?
I think on the whole, all of it.
I don't disagree.
Trauma means that you were afraid of death. And to heal, you need the courage to go back to the place where you thought you were going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So emotionally, you have to bring yourself back to that place where you're afraid to die. That means you have to face death again in the
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah. You have to open those wounds again.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I believe, like, I agree 100% because I talk about, for me, I think, along with what you just said, just being strong enough to revisit the wound, even when it's gonna hurt, to start your healing there. And along the way, I personally, perhaps it's my faith speaking there, but I personally don't believe you will find the true healing without forgiveness. And I say that a lot of people surprisingly believe that forgiveness is for the perpetrator or for the person who just wronged you, but forgiveness is for you. And it's a concept that people tend to struggle with because they don't want to forgive. They don't want to forgive. But once you understand that forgiveness is for you, I'm not saying that you have to or putting a timeline on it. From my experience, being able to forgive and rid yourself of this burden, this But it's the moment something popped up, it kind of brought you right back where you were. Like, you gotta release yourself. Forgiveness is a way of relieving yourself of the burden of the stronghold that somebody may have on you. So that's what I always tell them. Sometimes it's not easy. I find it to be one of the hardest ones personally.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. You forgive because it frees you
Hmm.
from the burden that you carry along until you do. But it's also the completion of the cycle
Hmm.
of healing, I believe,
Yes.
is a choice at the end.
Yes.
It may it may be used as a bypass,
Hmm.
like you forgive, but then there's a whole lot more to do. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That
For
means there's
sure.
a whole lot more to do, and you'll
Yeah.
still doesn't mean you're not gonna get angry again.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
just you just can keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I think actually spirituality or sense of a higher self is very important in healing because without it, you can never have that real courage to go back to that pain because you're going to feel like you're going to drown in it if you don't have a higher sense of something greater than you. And especially for a lot of people of extreme abuse, there's no ability to imagine that there's a benign authority
Hmm.
because because when we're children, authority figures are our gods. And then I was an atheist when I was a young adult because my own experience of authority was all negative.
Hmm.
So then I was an atheist. And I had to open up to that again slowly to really allow myself to heal because it doesn't work without it. And so the start of therapy for me was also the start of my spiritual journey.
That's beautiful. That's well said. And again, as a Christian myself, sometimes I do find it hard to even tell somebody that you need to start with forgiveness because I truly believe forgiveness, especially obviously there are layers to it. When you deal with somebody like something like abuse, a trauma, those kind of things, it requires almost like a supernatural type of forgiveness to actually or action to get to that forgiveness because human like on a human level, we are not wired that way.
Right.
Our default mode is not to forgive when somebody has wronged us. And depending on the level, just like I said, there are layers to it. So if it's that deep, if it cuts that deep, the one thing that's gonna be automatic for us is the hatred, the rage to like, I need to get back to them because you've done this to me and I didn't deserve it. That's gonna fuel you. The fact that you can justify that you didn't deserve something and it was done to you, it's gonna fuel you to no end. And I think for me as God, being a Christian, I don't know what it would be for somebody else, but having this type of belief in something greater than you, a supernatural type of belief, that's where you're going to harness that forgiveness energy to actually get there, to actually even gain the understanding of what forgiveness truly is and how it manifests. So
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on a secular level, of course you can forgive, but I just think that it's going to get to a level that I don't know if you're going to be able to harness that forgiveness if you don't believe in something much higher than you. Leave a comment below and let me know if you have any thoughts. So I'm always willing to learn. So that's me, but that's just my thoughts. Moving on to the next question. So, what do most parents misunderstand about protecting their children in a world like that, to be more precise?
Interesting. Well, you can be overprotective where the children don't actually feel free enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be too trusting in the authorities or the world so that they're actually not safe.
Mm-hmm.
So again, finding that balance, I think it always has to do with your personal work that going within. Because no matter, you can be in a Christian community and your children can be abused. So you have
Absolutely.
to really go within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
be still and know that I am God. That is be still and know that I am God. Go within and you have your intuition that sharpens. The more you heal, the more your intuition sharpens.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really how you are grounded in this world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Furthermore, I think also parents be parents. The idea that life is
Yeah, you're
difficult.
You're not the friends of your children, that's for sure.
Exactly. I tell my son, 7 years old, I tell him, I want to be your best friend. But guess what comes before that? I'm your dad. So you don't need to like me. You don't need to do anything. You need to respect me and see me as your dad first and foremost. So
That's
we,
beautiful.
yeah,
And
we
that's
live,
so
yeah, we live in a world where no is such a frowned upon word for parents to
it's
use when it
the
comes to
most
the kids.
important word that parents can use. It's the most important word. I mean,
Absolutely.
there is a tendency indeed of, I come from a time when we call it the old school, and the old school parenting is sort of like the toxic power structure where it's all about instilling fear in the children.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't work because then the children feels oppressed, and then they actually get traumatized from that feeling oppressed, and then
Correct.
they're going to rebel, etc.
Yeah.
But the alternative, and what is, in rebellion to that, or in reaction to that, parents have gone so far the other way
Yeah.
that they are not even parents anymore.
Right. You're just
Obviously,
letting
that
them do
doesn't
everything.
creates complete chaos. Obviously, what is needed is for parents to be parents. Yes, well said.
Absolutely. So, last question. When people hear childhood abuse, they think of events, but isn't the real damage is what it does to your identity? So, basically, trying to reshape people's brains. So, when they hear of a childhood abuse, they think about just the event or the events. They don't think about what comes after that, what you have to live with, and all that stuff. So, I guess this question is, do you agree that it is way more than just the event? And that there's a lot more that you have to deal. The aftermath of it is something that's just equally as egregious.
Or even more so. It lasts much longer, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So sexual abuse, particularly, you're an innocent child,
Mm-hmm.
and then that means you have the joy, you have the light. You come in with the light. That is your innocence.
Mm-hmm.
That is connection to the divine. That is who you are. And there is a joy just being alive, because that's your true nature is that joy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're sexually abused, you are being mind control trained in the worst way, getting the message that you're not worthy of being loved just for being you.
Yeah.
That in fact, to be loved, now you actually have to put out sexually.
Mm-hmm.
So you lose. That is why they speak of stealing innocence. Your innocence is now stolen, and now you can never go back. Or
Mm-hmm.
you'd feel in
Mm-hmm.
the beginning. You can never go back to yesterday. You can never go back to the time when you were free, when you were joyful, when you were you. And every aspect of your life will be affected. And when I just, in my young adult life, I just kept looking for me. I just thought, where am I? I know that this is not me. I know
Mm-hmm.
that I just kept looking for me. And then it took years, and I was always in some kind of a repetition of the trauma
Mm-hmm.
without realizing, some loop where there was actually an emotional repetition happening and I didn't realize it. And I was gonna, whatever situation where I would get triggered, or I'd end up in some situation. Well, it's from, the magnetism that was created through the trauma. And in unconsciously seeking to heal from that trauma, to get that validation that you were innocent, to get that love that you didn't receive, to get that compassion and that loving gaze
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't have in that moment, you keep searching for it in all the wrong places. And so it takes often a really long time before you realize this isn't going to work. And then the same with addictions. People look for peace in addiction, or they look for relief, or they look for escape. Whatever it is that you're seeking is all related to the trauma.
Yeah.
So when you get to the trauma and you get to that truth of you, then you begin to get back to you. But it's such hard work.
It's
So you can have one
incredibly
event
hard.
and it's incredibly hard to heal from it.
Yeah.
It's going to affect your whole life. And so, yes, you said earlier, the anger and the sense of revenge and everything, they all belong in that healing process. And then, because where we want to get to is where we are so balanced again within ourselves that we can forgive, but also that our lives are not ruined by it anymore. That in fact, the spiritual lesson has come and made itself known, and that the whole situation of the trauma has taught me personally what I needed to know. Like I'm much more compassionate person now.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to learn to forgive the worst criminals.
Right.
And, I would not have been able to do that before. I've learned so much. And the wisdom from the insides, from the healing process, that's the only thing that kept me going for a long time. That I was learning something that I know on a very deep level that I wanted, that I needed. That was a spiritual lesson.
Wow. Well said. And again, for me, I specifically love this question because there's so much to it, as you just beautifully laid out. When you think, we also live in a world where people love to medicate and over medicate themselves. And so when a child is in school and unable to retain what the teacher's teaching or their lessons or remembering things, and all around having a huge struggle just trying to do well in school, a lot of times they go through the pill, like medicating route. Whether it's your schooling, whether it's you not able to form strong friendships, whether it's you letting, just fast forward, you get married and you just cannot understand why you keep having fights that have nothing to do with your spouse. And fast forward, you have kids, you feel like this disconnection, this fear all over them, even when it's not warranted. Those are all things that you gotta trace back to its root, which would be the abuse that you suffered when you were a kid. Because when you're not able to compartmentalize things, which is something I talk about a lot, it is such a vicious cycle. So you take it as when you were so little, something started that you had absolutely no clue about. And I'm speaking from my experience. And growing up, I'm being told that it's okay, when in my head, it's not okay. I'm being told that this is the right thing that should be happening. You are super cool for having that same thing happening to you. And I'm over here thinking, like, then why doesn't it feel good? Why does it feel so like, why is there an imbalance? Growing up to just keep being told one thing and my body saying one thing, having to be somebody else. So it's such a vicious cycle, and life goes on and you're growing. You're being introduced to people. You're having to be in different places. You're having to have to do different things. One thing that just hasn't changed is that healing that you haven't gotten. And every once in a while, sometimes more time than not, you will see how it's just spilling into different areas, such as your education, your friendship, your marriage, your parenting. You'll see alcohol as a coping mechanism. You'll see drugs as something that you have to do to keep suppressing that healing that you've never gotten. So I talk about how important it is. At the beginning, you alluded to the fact that me being a male and a Black male in particular, and I never like to use my color for anything at all, but it's just because I'm saying that because statistically speaking, there is, even that plays a role into how much CSA actually affects different ethnicities. So it's not just like male, it affects in this level, and female. You have to go even deeper. It affects whether you are here in America or you come from a third world country, which is the case of yours truly, or it's just so many layers to it. But at the very bottom, at the end of the day, it's just your innocence has been taken away from you even before you knew that what innocent was. And so you got to retrace that all the way back to get the healing that you need in order to live to your full potential. So that's my little 2 cents on that. And that's my message that I keep preaching to everybody. And on this channel, it's what I do. I just want people to live to the best of their ability, to live, to do what God had created them to do, which is love people, love God, and just live a life that is pleasing to God. And that is just worthy of living. The world has enough stuff to worry about as it is. If we can fix that, area, I think the world could be a better place. Before we go, I would like to ask you, is there anything that we talked about today is there anything else that you'd like to cover that we didn't talk about?
No, I think it was a very nice conversation and a very unusual interview in that sense that it's really a conversation, and it's nice because you are a survivor, and yes, you have your own thoughts, and I really enjoyed, that you shared your thoughts, and it's just wonderful. I mean, I I don't mind that if people really want to know my story,
Mm-hmm.
go to my website. There's lots of other interviews available. There's lots of talks, and then of course there's my book that people can read if
Yeah,
they're interested.
go ahead and pull it up real quick. So show people your book, and then I'm also going to ask you, where can people get your book, and then take this opportunity to tell us about your website and everything else that you have going on so people can connect with you.
Yeah, so that's the cover of my book. It's called Quest for Love, Memoir of a Child Sex Slave. My name is Anneke Lucas. And my website is just my name, AnnekeLucas.com, which it's important to say that because can't find it anymore on Google. And my website has a lot of information. It's enough, and I'm also on social media. So, if you want to find out more, about the trafficking and the situation and the elites of Belgium and then the global elites, um, that's a whole story. And I do, the book is not so much about that. The book is more going into the details and the psychology, hopefully, to really bring the reader into the situation of the child. That was really the purpose, and that you are getting a firsthand experience from the perspective of the child.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, my psychological understanding and my writing, because I do consider myself a writer first before anything else. So, my hope is that the writing carries you because it's a very difficult subject, and hopefully the writing helps you, the thoroughness of the writing, and hopefully my ability then carries you through the language itself in this experience, which could be so difficult, which is never sensational, but it's very real.
No, that's beautiful, and I'll second that. I think it's a great book, and everybody needs to read it. Whether you are a survivor, you are a parent, you just need to read it. At the end of the day, like, I'm just one to believe in just the reality of it. What is the reality? The reality is this kind of stuff, everything we just talked about here, it is happening. Just because you don't want to think about it, or you think it's weird, it's awkward, it's icky, does not stop it from happening. And statistically speaking, every one of us, you can ask around, you know a survivor. You know somebody who's been through a lot of stuff. Survivors are masters of disguise. So knowing how to speak with them, knowing even if it's not you, it's never happened to you, one day you're going to become a parent. It's good to educate yourself. It's good to know what's out there. And so then you can prepare yourself. You can move around a little bit differently, a little less, I don't know, pretending that the world is so lovely. It is lovely. But at the same time, we live in a world that also has all this crazy things happening. So I would hate for your kids to have to go through that. And the best way to do that is to educate yourself and understand what's out there and prepare yourself. So without that's all we have today. Thank you so much for watching. Lucas, it's my privilege. I'm so thankful. And I hope you know that you can always come on every time you need to speak to, you know, my audience or any other audience out there. I think everything you have to say has so much value, and you should not stay quiet. And I know you're not going to stay quiet. Thank you so much for taking the time, and have a lovely afternoon. And I look forward to speak with you soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Bye-bye, everybody.
Hey, yeah, you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Like, subscribe, and share it. Help me spread the word.